Gaywyck by Vincent Verga. Publisher Allison Books, Los Angeles, New York. Narrator Eric Aust. 2 days later, I received a letter from Danough Gaylord. It was the first he had ever written me. I hold the gray monogrammed stationery in my hand now. I remember the words. Dear Robert, if you think you would find it to your liking, please consider a visit to Gramercy Park for Christmas. Ponder and send your decision. I will inform the household to plan accordingly. I dined with good buddy and Mortimer last evening. They send their regards. DG. Ponder? I had no idea what he thought I would need to ponder. When I asked Denvers, he shrugged and suggested I wait several days before responding. Then Danough will be convinced you've thought over what he expects you to think over, and you've decided on a visit in spite of, or because of, or whatever. God knows what. Ponder indeed. I nodded and waited 2 days before replying in the affirmative. At first, I had some qualms about leaving Keys and Denvers and Brian for Christmas, but when it was explained that the holiday was treated as just another excuse for an elaborate meal, I started counting the days until the 23rd of December when I would board the train at Sterling Harbor. As with every other emotional upheaval, it took nearly a week for me to identify the uneasiness I felt regarding the impending holiday. I spoke to myself, as always. The exchange was brief and to the point. It was belabored later in my journals. They said he loves me. I heard them say he loves me. Finally loves someone. But they don't know how difficult it is for him. How secretive and mysterious it has to be. No. But he and I know. I'll change all that. No. My love will transform him. Yes. I hadn't read so many novels without learning something. I felt better, quieted, trusting to the healing powers of love. I inhaled deeply, savoring the sensation swelling at the core of my being. So this is love, I pondered, pleased. During the month that followed, I altered my routine to include a regular visit with the sequestered woman in white. Only once did she visit me that night. I jolted awake, knowing I was not alone. She stood by my bed, holding a silver knitting needle as if it were a dagger. I wondered how long she had stood by my bed, but that was not the first question I framed when I was able to speak. What's wrong? I gasped, moving to the far side of the bed. They're dead. I've killed them. Killed whom? I shouted, leaping out of her reach. It had to be. God will forgive me if he saw. Cormac is free. If you had not been lost, my dearest, we would have found another way. We were reckoned clever before they buried Mary Rose. My God, give me that needle! Whom have you killed? Denvers is mad. He's tormenting Cormac. I think he's jealous. Have you killed Denvers? I whispered, staring at the needle for signs of blood. Cormac isn't to know, and never forget it. That's why they send him away. No one knows he visits me. Who visits you? Have you mentioned me? She sped away, horrified. I followed like Kale she seemed to see in the dark. Her white figure led me to the art room, where I watched her negotiate my secret passageway. For her safety, and mine, I resolved to lock the wall. I sneaked into Denver's room, though his snoring reassured me. I was awake the entire night. Had she murdered Gaylord and Cormac? The next afternoon, I found the spring mechanism and closed the doors behind me. I conjecture in my journal who the woman could have been. Her resemblance to my mother was stupefying, and the mystery frightened and stymied me. Reader, I was as one lost in a foreign country. Voyagers, both. We haunted Gaywyck as with the other conundrums. I listened to my heart. It bade me be still and wait. 4 weeks after posting my acceptance note, I left for Gramercy Park. I packed enough for a 2-year stay, because Brian insisted he knew better than I, and he helped me with an excitement equally my own. We prepared for every emergency, including midwinter, spring, which he posited might arrive without warning the next morning. He dogged me, making certain I was not stuffing suits into hat boxes or tossing shoes into dressing cases. When we finished, I said, exhausted, toying with kale, "Well, Brian, I can now survive the flood, the freeze, the frogs, the flies, and even hail and boils. But the famine still has a chance." I laughed. He frowned. I knew he was irrationally contemplating a tin of biscuits from my Gladstone. To distract him, I threw a pillow at his head. We ended the last afternoon with some raucous laughter and my threatening not to fill his order if he didn't desist. We produced such a noise that Denvers appeared in my doorway to see what exactly was going on. I warned Brian I wouldn't bring all he wants back from town if he doesn't stop throwing things. A pillow shut my mouth. I grabbed Brian by the waist and tickled him until he broke free and ran laughing from the room. "He's going to miss you, Robbie." "We all are." "I'll be back soon." "Yes. And the peace and quiet will do us all good. And tomorrow the lilacs will bloom again, and Thursday Christ will come to tea with his comrade John the Baptist." The train departed Sterling Harbor at 11 in the morning. We left Gaywyck at 10:30. Brian held the reins of the sled. I sat by his side. I asked him if he ever thought of visiting New York. He said no. The noise was too great, the people too many, and the smells made him ill. He did, however, enjoy the ferry. To compensate, Mr. Danough took him on a birthday steamboat excursion each May 22nd. I told him that in exchange for that yearly ride, I, too, would forego the pleasures of the metropolis. He asked to see the shopping list. I produced it. He was happy to see. He said how reliable I was. His officious, condescending manner amused me. Putting my arm around his shoulder, I called him the truest of friends. He laughed and admitted he liked me, too. "When you first arrived, I took you for a prig. But I was wrong. Even Ambrose likes you, and he doesn't like anybody. He says you're slow, but he shouldn't complain." Teo awaited us on the platform. He was not alone. By his side stood a young man, a curious-looking young man with large ears, a pug nose, brown hair cropped without design, ferret eyes, skin not too clear, and, more curiously, a frame smaller than his Japanese companions. "Mr. Robert," Teo addressed me with cool formality. "This is Price Jones. He will assist you on the journey." I noticed a distinctly acerbic tone. I smiled at the new person. He smiled in return, revealing the most perfect set of white teeth. "Take the Gladstone. Price Jones," Teo ordered as we boarded. While he struggled with the heavy bag, I said goodbye to Brian. He was grinning idiotically at the youngster's difficulties. "I am training him," Teo explained, settling me into the carriage. "He is a good little chappie, really, but I do not want him to get funny ideas. You see, he is Welsh. He says I do not know any Welshmen. I have no idea what to expect. Mr. Danough wants him to take over the train journeys. I am pleased. It is a good job. I hope he is up to it." He seems willing and eager. The sounds of Price Jones cursing as he tumbled down the steps interrupted our colloquy. Teo emitted a guttural expletive in his native tongue and hurried to the window. "I hope there is nothing breakable in your Gladstone, Mr. Robert." "Actually, there are scent bottles and—" "Goodness! Hold yourself there, Price Jones. I will assist you. I will send him in to see if you require anything." Price Jones. I wondered if he were any relation to the murdered Mr. Jones. I could hear Teo berating him, saying his name as if it were one word. The train started. Teo reappeared, and a tremendous racket came from the carriage in front of us. "Goodness! Teo, I think you had better go see what just fell on Price Jones." I shouldn't have laughed, but I did. I wouldn't be laughing for long. Luncheon was worse than awful. Poor Price Jones's natural clumsiness was not aided by the twitching and jerking of the railroad car, or by Teo's tutting and sighing for each error of form committed by his new assistant. I did all I could to help, even refusing second helpings, but my very presence complicated matters for the neophyte. He trembled violently, tracking venison blood across my lap and sliding a buttered bean into my vest pocket. My brown tie remained unsullied until dessert. That mishap was partly my fault. The chocolate ice cream would have rolled down my back if I hadn't turned when Price Jones yelled. "At least, sir, it's the same color, sir, as the tie, sir." "I don't believe you said that, Price Jones. Tell me you didn't mean that, please." He was instantly banished by Teo, who noticed the bloodstain on my trousers. He whimpered, then cried aloud as I produced the green bean from my pocket. He called after the fleeing boy to open my valise. A change of costume was required, and then growling, he gave chase. When he opened the carriage door, waves of my scent wafted through the air. I shook my head in disbelief and began undressing. Teo screamed in several languages. Mr. Tibbs reappeared to inform me Teo was too distressed to serve me, and would I like my coffee now? Half dressed, I sat before the fire. As he left me, I caught a few obscene phrases in Teo's high-pitched voice and another cloud of my scent. He closed the door. Another one, further on, slammed. Then there was silence. The sudden silence was more worrying than the fracas. After a tense 15 minutes, Price Jones entered, his nose and eyes red from weeping. He carried a wooden tray where he deftly stacked the dirty plates and the remains of my luncheon. I watched him work and wanted to comfort him. "You'll get the hang of it in no time, you know." "I've got the hang of it now, sir. If that cheek would leave me to it, staring at me, making me do everything wrong. If he'd stop poking at me like I was muck." He stopped, his words caught in his throat. Tears spilled onto the tray. "He's Japanese," I said softly, unable to think of anything else. He shrugged eloquently. To him, there was no difference. "He told me," I said soothingly, "that he thinks you're a good chap. He doesn't want you to get any funny ideas, that's all. The only funny ideas I got he gave me, and if I carry them out, he won't be around to dance at my hanging, 'cause he'll be the cause of it." I smiled. He stopped crying, sniffed heartily, and laughed, baring those perfect teeth of his. "If he thinks me a problem," he added, "wait till he meets Seth." The rest of the journey unfolded without incident. I stepped down from the train, rigged up in a different traveling outfit, but only Teo seemed upset by the change. Price Jones looked glum until he caught my eye, then he winked boldly. I liked him, and for the second time wondered about his background. Where was he from, and who was Seth? I was to learn the answer all too soon. Teo accompanied me to the waiting carriage. Our eyes met. I saw his distress and realized he was not angry at Price Jones, but deeply mortified at what he considered his own failure. As for the ice cream stain on the tie, I said, "At least, sir, it's the same color, sir, as the tie, sir." He laughed and waved. I felt better. That first night at Cromarty Park, when everything was grand and strange, he had treated me as one who belonged. If Danough came to me about it, I would laugh a great deal about the Price Jones mishap. All would be well. I would see to that. The snow had turned to slush on the streets of New York. It was too cold for the windows, and I drew the curtains and huddled under the lap rug. At the ferry, I stayed where I was. On the seat, I discovered the copy of La Basse. When the carriage started to roll again, I could no longer read. Only my destination interested me. I did not even care for the hubbub outside. The horses' hoofs sounded on wood, and then on concrete, and then on freezing cobblestones. The noise heightened as we slowly swung into open traffic. I pulled the lap rug tighter. Would he be in his study or in the sitting room downstairs? What would his first words be? A comfortable journey? What tidings of home? Alighting from the carriage, I glanced at his second-story window. expected to see his face and form. The window was in darkness, as were all the others. The sidewalk was recently shoveled, though a few footprints marred the thin layer of newly fallen snow. Carriage tracks crossed clearly in the whitened streets. The drifts on both sides of the shiny black door and against the red brick house were pristine and beautiful, protected by the tall black wrought iron fencing. A great Christmas wreath hung on the door, elegant and seasonally perfect, as something on the cover of Collier's magazine. Mr. Moore took my coat and showed me into the front parlor. I glanced affectionately at the large arrangement of winter flowers in the foyer. Then at the Van Gogh over the fireplace. A note was placed in my hands. Still standing, I read. Robert, I have been called away on business. I shall be back as soon as possible. We will be spending Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with Goodbody and Mortimer. I plan shopping for gifts tomorrow with the opera in the evening. Will that suit you? DG. P.S. If I am not returned for dinner, Teo has been instructed to serve you in your room. Not returned by dinner time? I was stupefied that business took precedence over me. I sat before the fire and felt tears welling. It seemed I had a great deal to learn. Teo led me up to my room. While he ran a bath, I sat at the desk studying the arrangement of white spider mums. Tomorrow's woman imparted their mistress longings, infusing this space with their beauty. I reread the note. After dinner, I made a lengthy, ponderous entry in my journal. Suddenly, I began to cry. I was astonished by the torrent, but continued writing as tears fell onto the page and coursed downward, connecting the lines with tiny streams of ink. The page is illegible. It became so as I wrote, yet I continued. I never learned by my mistakes. What difference does it make if I can or cannot read them? I knew disappointment did not warrant such an outburst. Whatever love is, it is not rational. I closed the journal, unblotted, and climbed into bed. Teo knocked. He asked if I wanted tea or hot milk. I did not. I began making plans for the morrow in case a note awaited me apologizing for his immediate departure on important business in Persia. There was another knock. Danough Gaylord looked exhausted and appeared in the doorway. Without entering, he spoke. Put out your light, Robert. It's very late, and we have a full day tomorrow. You will need your rest. Go to sleep. Good night. He closed the door. I listened to his steps recede. He spoke a few words to someone before a door opened and closed. As ordered, I extinguished my light. But the sight of him had excited me beyond sleep. I lay awake, alert, with the quick pulsations of love. I whispered his name over and over, a sweet litany, praying he would visit my dreams. The street lamp illumined the white flowers across the room. Be patient, I thought. There's time. There is an eternity for loving. I rose and removed one of the mums from the vase, placing it in the water glass at my bedside. One step at a time, Robert Whyte. One small step at a time, I murmured, suddenly happy. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.